Hello and welcome to the Rolling With series. I'm Will, and with me as always is the heroine of this tale,
Sarah.
And today we're looking at Dominion Adventures. Sarah, tell us a bit about this game.
All right. Adventures is a big expansion that introduced events, reserve and traveler cards. It also includes player mats and a variety of tokens. All right. Let's start with events.
So, events are neat. They say put out about two each game, and there's only one card for each event. What they offer is, when it comes to the buying phase, normally you'd pay money, get a card, put it in your deck. Events are pay this amount of money, get this effect, don't get any cards.
Yeah.
Although some events may get you a card.
Yes, some events could gain you a card, but the event itself stays on the table.
Yes, they are an event for everyone to experience.
Yes.
A lot of this narratively is all about creating life experiences and how those life experiences changes your perspective and views and playing of the game.
Right. Yeah, so it's very, very interesting. I'm personally very happy that there are events in most games that we play now. Later expansions from this include events, and they are a nice option to have when you're really not sure, like you may not want to buy a card, but you want to move something forward. Events are typically a good way to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Reserve cards. Now, these are very different in how some other cards have been handled. And what it is there is a tavern mat. When you play the reserve card, it may or may not have an effect when you play it, but it will go immediately then onto your tavern mat. And then it has to meet a certain situation to trigger it.
So it works like a reaction card to different actions. When something happens, and it will state what that something needs to be, you can call it, which brings it to your play area and gives you a benefit. It's basically like, I did this thing, and then you're like, oh yeah, back in the day when I did such a thing, we did this, and I learned from it and got more out of it.
Right. So calling it a delayed reaction is probably a good way to think about it and to frame it in your mind, but it is usually something that triggers off of something you do, not all of them, but most of them do, and then you get that extra cool effect. All right. Then another neat thing this expansion introduced was Travelers, the Page and the Peasant. Now, we had an evolution card before, but these ones were kind of simpler, is that when you discarded the card, it will automatically upgrade to the next level, and it includes 4 upgrades per one. Page has 4 upgrades and the Peasant has 4 upgrades. And then when you get to the final form, that's what you keep.
Yeah. Because you're not the only person gaining life experience. These cards are also, as they go on their journey and travel, they learn, new things and thus gain new reputations based on what they do. Right.
So, and it's not always a positive, like one of these, I want to say might be the Peasant, actually, it's one of the two, becomes a brigand at one point and then becomes a teacher because they learned from
their mistakes.
So again, narratively, it's very interesting to see these cards grow through their life to their final form and things. And each one has an interesting effect. Mechanically, you've got to be careful because you may like a certain form's effect, but as soon as you play it, if it's discarded, if you can't find some way to not discard it, it's going to evolve, and you'll have to end up using the next form.
Yes. And then you have tokens. a lot of tokens.
Oh, where did I put that?
So tokens are interesting because...
there's like 10 different tokens per color player.
Yeah. These modify the game for you personally.
Yes.
And sometimes for others, and they know who did it to them because it's in your color when you've done it to them. So let's say, for example, you have the +1 card. The +1 card will get put on based on the teacher or some of the events onto any of the stacks you can buy. Okay, so you put it on there. Now, whenever you play that particular card, you get that bonus in addition to the card's bonus. So you've just modified it asymmetrically for yourself personally, because your life experience tells you that this happens. And like Sarah was holding up, there are quite a few of them.
Yeah, and some of them are negative, so some of them are actually going to go like
in front of other players.
Well, no, it's not in front of other players. It's you always put your color in front of you, but you can play cards that will put a negative in front of someone else. So like someone could play, I can't remember the card, but you can get a -1 money.
Bridge Troll.
Right, that's what it was, Bridge Troll. So you put, I still think you put your color in front of you. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
no, I think you put your color in front of someone else.
Okay, but you can get negatives. You can get a negative card draw. Are those the only
negative card draw and negative money. So the next time it happens, now once it hits you, that's when that token goes back to the player.
Yeah, it clears off.
So it doesn't stay with you like the ones that go out in the middle of the supply. It's still a lot to track.
Yes.
And keep.
The good news is, unless you really seek out all the cards that add tokens to the game, you probably will not play with all the tokens in the game. Like, just because of random setup, you may need 1 or 2 of those tokens, but probably not all of them. So looking at the box, it's very overwhelming to think, oh my god, there's 10 tokens, and there's this tavern mat and things like that. But
you may play with 2 of them.
Yeah. So it's hopefully not as bad.
Yeah.
There are also then some new hybrid cards. Hybrid cards are not new, but they now mixed, durations with treasure and attacks with duration.
Duration with reaction.
Duration with reaction. So there's some new hybrid mixes that we haven't seen before.
I think you put it best that this is the Dominion kitchen sink.
Yes. I mean, you don't just get the sink with this, you get the whole darn kitchen with this. Setup for this is going to take longer than most of the other expansions, save maybe Nocturne. You just have to make sure you go through all the cards and make sure you have all the appropriate tokens, stacks, and mats.
Yep.
So it's just slightly more fiddly than most of the expansions.
Yeah, harder to get on and off the table.
Yes.
So, who would you recommend it for?
This is going to be for advanced players who want the game to be more challenging. They want it to be more engaging with lots of options and lots of paths to pursue. Like Will hit it on the head. This is one of the few ones that you could really focus on getting asymmetry. I mean, there's already going to be asymmetry in Dominion just because even if Will and I start off kind of the same, we're going to start buying different cards. Well, now you can modify the card to be different for you. So we might both be playing the village, whatever, but mine's got +1 coin and his has +1 card. So that effect is just going to make it that much more unique. You're going to have, just like I said, more options, more paths to pursue. The travelers going through their life, the what do you call it? The reserve cards.
Yeah, it's a whole heck of a lot to keep track of.
This is a heavy expansion. Now, if I remember correctly, this was the one that came out after the break where they had announced we're no longer doing anymore, or was that before Guilds? I can't remember.
I think this was it. They're like, we're not doing anymore. Oh, and by the way, here's another expansion.
Right.
And we're doing the publishing through Hasbro.
Oh, so that is one of the downsides, is the quality of some of the components kind of went down. It's not bad. If anything, because if you have first edition and then you start getting some of these, some of the text is actually going to be easier to read because they chose a lighter gray and a larger font. So some of that is better, but I would say some of the card quality is not as good. I think another issue is the fact that the chitboard, this is actually the first time where we're actually seeing with chitboard tokens. That's true. Well, we've seen the player mats before, and I think some of the ones in previous expansions were thicker.
Yeah.
I would also say just generally the quality of the images are not great. Like they might not have proofed them very well. Because I mean, like this is a tavern. It's mostly a black image because it's too dark. I understand a tavern is dark, but you kind of want to see more than a few faces and some firelight illuminating those faces.
But it's back then and they don't have really good lighting. So that's all what you really do see.
It's just that if you're used to the first edition and the first grouping of expansions, and then you get this, you might notice the quality of the components went down a little bit.
Yeah, but further editions are going to be through Hasbro, so that's all going to match the Adventures style.
But yeah, if you are an advanced player and you want to dive into the deep end
and have a very personalized experience,
yes, this is the expansion for you.
So hopefully that will be helpful to you. Don't forget to check out the other video where I do the flavor text of Dominion Adventures, and you will go on the adventure with me over there on Board Game Theater. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach us on the various social media platforms at
Rolling with Two, that's TWO. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And on YouTube, please like and subscribe.
And Sarah, this is where our adventure ends. Because we've been rolling
with Dominion.